Thanks for joining us at Right On Replicas, where we're proud to bring you the best scale model kit reviews on the planet. This review covers the 1967 Camaro SS. It's a 125 scale kit from Revell, number 85-4936. Now this kit was packaged as a special editions kit, and that usually means it's a little higher skill level. They rated this 3, and it also means lots of parts. Now the first generation Camaro appeared in dealerships in September of '66 for the '67 model year, and the SS version came with factory stock 350, but also a 396 cubic inch V8. The Super Sport version featured non-functional air inlets on the hood, some special stripes, and SS badging on the grille, fenders, gas cap, and horn button. And this kit consists of 130 pieces molded in white, clear, and clear red chrome with vinyl tires and metal axle pins. It was a new mold in 2014, and they're still available on the auction sites and some of your larger hobby shops. And it has a 396 motor, which is nicely detailed. The chassis is pretty basic, but it's well defined, and the interior is a modern style. There were no optional parts available in the kit for a different. You either got the race version or stock. And the decals are pretty extensive. They had stock badging with black or white stripes. They had some generic race decals, and overall when you're done it'll be about 7 1/4 inches long, 3 inches wide, and 1 3/4 inches high. Here are the decals for the kit, and as you can see there's 2 different color variations so that you can match a lot of different color schemes. Now they're very good register, and they're pretty colorful, but I strongly suggest you use some of the aftermarket setting solution to help these conform to the contours. We'll be using mostly liquid cement for the construction, some super glue, and then of course white glue or a crystal clear for any of the clear parts. Now remember to heed all the manufacturer's safety and use guidelines when you hear or see about any of the products used in the review. Construction starts with the motor, so gather these parts from the kit, assemble the block halves, the heads, and the oil pan, and paint the block red. Then the bell housing is black, and the transmission is steel colored. The intake is aluminum, and the water pump is steel. Now the starter is black with a gold solenoid, and the fuel pump is steel. The fan is flat black. Now the belt is flat black, and the carbs get a kind of a gold tint to them. The distributor is tan with a steel base, and the coil is black. The oil filter can be blue. Now the alternator is aluminum, and the exhaust is steel. We'll also be adding the air cleaner, and note the difference between the race air filter and the stock air filter for your choice. After the paint dries, install the intake and the valve covers. And by the way, remember to scrape off any plating or paint so that the glue adheres well and bonds to the plastic. Now add the water pump, and then on the left side add the starter and the fuel pump, and on the right add the oil filter. On the intake add the carb, the distributor, and coil. On the right side install the alternator to the back of the belt assembly, and then add the belt to the front of the motor with the fan and the fan clutch. Now you can glue the exhaust to the cylinder heads, and then decal 9 goes on each of the tops of the valve covers, and decal 8 goes on the left, and 13 is on the oil filter. Now let that set aside to dry, and we'll start on the chassis. And prior to any work there, remove the copyright scripts with a blade, and then sand it smooth, as you see them here in the arrows. Now paint the chassis pan a red oxide primer color with black frame rails. The gas tank is steel with black straps, and the steering box is black. Now the exhaust pipes are steel with silver or aluminum mufflers, and install the motor into place on its mounts. Then install the steering box to the frame rail, and assemble the rear exhaust unit, and attach the exhaust pipes into place from the manifolds to the rear of the chassis, and then line up the rear muffler in place and attach it. So locate the rear suspension pieces as you see here, and we'll work on those. Assemble the axle and the differential together, and then add the leaf springs in place on the axle and paint that unit semi-gloss black. Now the shocks are painted the color of your favorite brand, and the drive shaft is steel, and as is the sway bar, and install the drive shaft into the transmission, simultaneously adding it into the differential. Now install the suspension into place and add the shocks to the suspension and chassis. Now install the sway bar. Grab the pieces for the front suspension assembly and then paint the units black with a steel sway bar, and then install the sway bar to the frame and then the suspension arms into place. Now the instructions have you move to the interior now, but you'll have to finish the chassis first, and there's no reason not to install the tires into place and finish this sub-assembly at this time. So that's where we'll go. Now you can see here the pieces used for the assembly of the wheels and tires, and the front has disc brakes as the back has drum brakes. So also choose your rims, either the stock or race version, to make the tires look used. I would press and roll the tread on a sheet of flat 220 grit sandpaper. This roughs up the tread and gives it a used look. And as the tires are not directional, they all assemble the same way, so it's up to you where you want to place them. Now I painted the rim spokes black to match the paint scheme. The axle pin goes in the retainer and is painted to match the rim. And then I insert the pin into the retainer and glue that to the rim back. Now install the calipers onto the front, and also the brake backs, of course. And as you can see here, they're in place. Now I painted my calipers red. I think the stock color for the caliper is a goldish. And then there's the rear drums. You can install those into place on the mounting points through the axle. So use some spearing super glue to install the wheels onto the into the axles. Just put a little dab on the end of the axle pins and put those into place. So you can see here, you can set the entire chassis, which is your rolling chassis, aside, and we'll start working on the interior. So we're going to work on that interior now, and gather up the interior pieces, and note that the roll bar is used in place of the seat back, for the back seat for the race version, and of course the seat for the stock version. So paint the interior pan flat black with a satin black package shelf, and the fender wells are flat black also. Now assemble the seats and paint them satin black. The door panels are satin black with some silver knobs to highlight them, and the roll bar is black. Now the firewall is a flat black, and the battery is black with steel posts and red caps. The brake booster can be black with a steel master cylinder, and paint the master cylinder's cap a gold tint. The shifter is aluminum and flat black boot with white knob. Now the console is satin black, and the water bottle is white with a black cap as well. Decal number 2 goes on the console, number 5 goes on the shifter, and number 12 goes on the battery, and number 6 on the door panels. Now we can assemble the interior by adding the console in place, and the shifter goes onto the console in the hole provided, and then add the seats to the floor pan and install the roll bar for the race version or the seat for the stock version. On the fenders, inner fenders, you can add the washer bottle and the battery into place, and on the firewall glue the brake booster and then the master cylinder onto the front of the booster. Now install the firewall and install the door panels into place now too. So we'll use these pieces to assemble the dash, and first paint the dash, the steering column, and the wheel black, and then the trim on the dash is silver. You can use a silver pen, dry brush, or whatever you prefer. The spokes on the wheel are silver, and then the turn signal shaft is silver on the column. Decal number 2 is the instrument panel, and add that to the clear instrument glass and install that on the back side of the dash so that you can see it through the gauge holes. Decal 3 is the horn button on the wheel, and number 4 is the radio. So install the column into the dash and the wheel onto the column. Then install this whole assembly onto the notches in the floor door panel. And so here is the completed interior assembly. So dry fit your gluing points where you're going to install the interior tub to the chassis. Scrape off any paint that's in the way and glue the interior tub now onto the chassis with some good strong glue. And get the radiator and related pieces out of the kit. They'll be the last to install in the chassis. And then paint the shroud, the radiator wall, the hood latch, and both hoses a flat black. The radiator is aluminum color with black sides. And decal 10 goes on the shroud top and 11 on the wall top of the radiator. Install the radiator to the wall and the shroud goes on the radiator. Now the hood latch is installed on the wall and the hoses are attached into place on the radiator. So install this unit lining up the hoses to the motor and the wall onto the frame front. Now the whole assembly can be set aside to work on the body. Go ahead and get these pieces out to prep the body. Take all the parts that need to be painted and check for any mold lines or sinks, etc. This sample was very nice, and Revell did a good job on the body. I didn't see the visible lines, but I used a little light sandpaper to water sand all the parts at about an 800 grit and then rinse them clean. Let that air dry, and then the parts can be primered completely prior to any paint work. So use a good primer and prime the pieces inside and out, and once they're cured you can water sand that again with some fine sandpaper and get ready for the exterior color. To add a little flair to my model, I chose to put a two-tone paint job on it, and this will require an extra step. Now I used an airbrush for mine, and I got some automotive paints. The gold here for base coat is a Ford Fort Knox Harvest Gold, and then the tops will be a Nissan called Structural Gray for the upper side. So after water sanding the primer and letting it dry, I painted the first color as you see, and then always paint the lighter color first because darker colors will cover better over the lighter colors. So next I'm going to mask off the parts of the car that remain and we're going to cover up the gold, and then I use what we call 3M fine line tape. That's an automotive tape for the main tape line. It gives you a nice straight edge, and the remainder of the car I used a low-tack painter's tape below that to cover it up. Now once I have the masking work done, I'll paint the second color on the body and the hood. After the paint has dried thoroughly, we can apply the decals, and as you can see, these large decals are pretty nice, but still I would use some of the setting solutions available for them to settle on. Use plenty of warm water, let them set and soak for at least 1 minute, and then use some warm water on the surface to make sure that you can position them before you squeeze out any of the water or air that's trapped under them, and then apply your setting solutions to make sure that they conform. Add some realism to the chrome trim. I applied a metal foil application. It's like a shiny tape that you stick onto the surfaces that you want to cover. You just stick it on there like tape, and then you trim off the excess, and you have what looks very close to a chrome piece like these window vents. And I did that on the all the trim on the car. I dipped the glass pieces into some of the future or pledge floor polish solution, wicked it off, and then let it dry. And once that was done, I painted the visors black, and I used some white glue to run a bead around the glass, hold it into the interior, and then I also used some to install the mirror into place. Now paint the bottom of the overhead roof liner there a light silver, and install that. And then the reason for the of course the clear glue is, or white glue, is it dries clear. Well, once the glass has dried into place, we can install the interior and chassis subassembly there, and we're going to start at the back and locate your gluing points so that you know where to place the glue prior to inserting it. And then you're going to start at the back and slowly kind of shoehorn the tub and chassis into place. And it fits pretty tightly there. You might not need some glue, but a dab here and there where they touch won't hurt. Keep it into position. Gather up these pieces for the front end. It's installed next, so I used a 50-50 black and thinner wash to coat the grill and seep into the recesses there to make it look more realistic. Now install the headlights and the running light lenses in place using some white glue or crystal clear. And then decal number 46 goes on the headlights and decal 47 on the running lights. Now decal 14 is the center emblem, and install the grill into place. Now add the bumper to the front roll pan and install that. And paint the front spoiler flat black and install that on the roll pan. Now we'll use these pieces to finish up the back end. Install the bumper onto the rear roll pan and install that onto the car. And the red lenses go to the outside of the light bezels with the clear ones on the inside. I installed those with some white glue. Now decal 17 is for the gas cap, so install the gas cap into place. The final pieces can be installed, and I always paint the rubber portion of the wipers black before I put those into place, but remember to scrape any of the plating off if you want these parts to stick. So the wipers are then installed into place and the door handles can be added too. Then the hood vents are finished and installed, and the radiator wall braces are painted flat black and installed also. Now the car is complete once you install the hood into position. The engine in this particular vehicle and the entire engine bay actually is very nicely done, and here's what it looks like too. But they did a good job on this particular model, and I think you'll enjoy it. These are the parts that I had left over. Of course, I didn't make the stock version, and that's what these pieces are for, but also some of the decals that I didn't use. Well, there you have it. This is the first really nice kit of the 67 Camaro since the first early annuals, and they did a really good job with it. Now the interior is a basic SS, but it's nice console and gauges. The decals included for the gauges and the interior scripts are nice, and the roll bar is just a simple loop, but it still makes for a kind of a weekend racer that maybe the SWCA races would have hosted. The body's a great rendition, and the front grille is really nice. The decals all have the correct badging, and there's some race car roundels and sponsors, but you know, aftermarket decals and some aftermarket parts and a little extra attention to detail here would make this a contest winning type of car. Now this one only comes with the red lines, which are really nice for stock, but it could have used some street racing tires in the rear and maybe some headers for that big 396. There was hardly any mold lines or flash, so it was really easy to just get to work on it. Now I would suggest that if you want a great looking Camaro model, that you get one of these and put it on your shelf. We hope you like this premium step-by-step model kit review and build, and so that you don't miss any more, please subscribe to our YouTube channel, but you could find us on Facebook and at our website right on replicas.com. Thanks.